Welcome to the UK Travel Planning Podcast. Your host is the founder of the UK Travel Planning website, Tracy Collins. In this podcast, Tracy shares destination guides, travel tips, and itinerary ideas, as well as interviews with a variety of guests who share their knowledge and experience of UK travel to help you plan your perfect UK vacation. Join us as we explore the UK from cosmopolitan cities to quaint villages, from historic castles to beautiful islands, and from the picturesque countryside to seaside towns.
Hi, and welcome to the UK Travel Planning Podcast. This is episode number 9. In today's episode, I'm joined by my friend Karen and fellow Brit, who's come to ask me all sorts of questions about mine and Doug's travels plans for the UK for May, June and July of this year. I know that lots of people have been really interested in how we planned that trip. So Karen has agreed to come and have a little chat with me today. So hopefully she can pick all my brains and get lots of knowledge about how we did that trip. So Karen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Karen. I'm a blogger also at Smart Steps to Australia, a website to help families make the move to Australia. And I've been living in Australia for about 7.5 years now. And we haven't been back to the UK for a trip since we moved here. So I'm really looking forward to chatting to Tracy now to pick your brains all about your trip, because hopefully later on this year we're going to be taking a big trip with my family and I. So we've got a lot to kind of cover. I think a lot of useful questions we can get in here.
Yeah, it's going to be quite exciting because obviously you're going to be going over with your 3 kids as well who haven't been back to the UK for quite a while. So it's really a lot of fun. So if you're listening for the first time or you're not part of the Facebook group, just let you know that I do live in Australia. Me and Doug live in Australia, which I think gives us a unique perspective, because not only have we lived and worked in the UK, but actually we travel back to the UK as tourists as well. So we have to go through the same process of planning our trip. Obviously, we have a little bit more in-depth knowledge of places in the UK to visit, but we also have to go through the same processes to actually put our itinerary together as well, which I think gives us a bit of a unique perspective.
Yeah, no, and I know that we're in a big dilemma about all the different places we want to visit. So we've been busily reading your website and all of the content and listening to the podcast to try to get inspiration about some of the places we're going to go to. I think when you live in the country as well, you often don't explore it as well as you can. I think when you're a tourist, you kind of make more of an effort to go out there and visit more places. So we're definitely looking to visit a lot of the places when we go there too. So yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about your plans and where you're going, and just kind of give us a bit of an overview? How long are you going to be there for?
Okay, well, it's quite a long time that we're going back for. We're going back for 12 weeks. We're going in May. We'll come back to Australia in August. So we'll be in the UK for most of May, all of June, all of July, and a little bit of August. So 12 weeks. So it's taken us quite a while to actually get our heads around, put all the itinerary together, because there's so many places that we wanted to visit. I
was going to say, it sounds like a really long time. 12 weeks sounds like a big trip, and it is a big trip, but there's so many places and so much to cram into that time.
That's it. To be honest, it does sound a long time, and it is a long time, 12 weeks, and I know plenty of people would love to have that opportunity, but actually there's so many places to visit that it's actually impossible for us to. We really wanted to get over to Northern Ireland, and we've not managed to fit that in this trip. We will do next time, and we're probably only going to do a couple of trips into Wales. So really this trip is primarily going to be focused on Scotland and England, though we are planning a trip over to Paris for a day or two, because I know that's kind of popular day trip or a couple of day trip for many of our Facebook group community. So we want to take some video and answer some questions around, how easy it is to do that trip on the Eurostar. So basically, in May, it's mainly Scotland. So we'll be traveling around Scotland by car, which is going to be really, really exciting. So we're picking up a car in Edinburgh, and then we're kind of doing a circuit which will take us back to Edinburgh, basically about 3 weeks later. So going to, you name it, basically we're trying to fit it in. So we're actually doing a bit of the North Coast 500 as well, which we've not done before. So that's going to be really exciting. We're just hoping the weather's going to be good. And then June is we're going to be based in the Midlands. So basically we've divided each month up into specific areas. So we are looking at the Midlands for June with lots of day trips. So actually we are going to be also doing some extended day trips. So so multi-day trips. So we'll be in the Lake District for 3 days. We're going to be in the Cotswolds for about 5 days. We are still firming up some of the details around that as well, because I wanted to fit extra time in London in June. So we've got some odd days down in London, but there's some specific things we want to do. And I'm trying to fit in as many afternoon teas as I can.
I've seen that in the group. Every time anybody mentions an afternoon tea, Tracy's like, I'm there.
I know. I'm trying to fit as many afternoon teas in as I can. So that means I have to do as many day trips to London and have an afternoon tea and then see a little bit extra of what we want to do. And there's so many afternoon teas to choose from. It's impossible. I reckon 365 days would not get me to all the afternoon teas.
What I'm loving is that this isn't a holiday for you. This is a research project. You're taking on board all of the questions that you're getting, and you're going out there to search out all those places to provide the answers in as much detail as you can, including eating all the cakes and afternoon teas.
Well, that's it, the things I have to do, honestly.
It's a hard life.
Yes, I've been doing a lot of walking, certainly around London and hopefully in Scotland, just to kind of work off all those afternoon teas. We have looked at where most of the kind of interest and questions have come from in the group, and obviously on our website as well. So we will be spending, quite a bit of time in London. Also, Scotland is a major destination, Edinburgh. And actually, I would like to encourage people to get out of Edinburgh as well, go up to the Highlands and do a driving trip or take the train, which we generally do. We're big fans of the Caledonian Sleeper, which we've talked about in a previous podcast. So we love taking the train up to Fort William or Inverness and then hiring a car from there and doing a bit of touring. But this year we're also going on the Jacobite, which we haven't done before, the Harry Potter train. So that's going to be amazing. So going back, I guess, the Midlands in June, but with some visits to lots of other places as well. But we're kind of basing ourselves with some friends. So we'll be also going up to York. We're going to Whitby. We'll be in the Cotswolds, like I said. We'll be doing lots of day trips as well. So possibly Oxford, Cambridge, visits to London. I actually want to spend a whole day in London just in Greenwich, because I love Greenwich and I think it's often overlooked by visitors, and it's just beautiful. So we're going to spend a whole day, visiting Greenwich and visiting some of the markets as well. So while we're doing that as well, I'm going to be doing a lot of Facebook Lives, and I'll be putting YouTube videos as well to kind of show where we are, and also sharing some tips, things that we've learned along the way. So that'll certainly be useful for people who, all the links to that will be in the show notes as well after this podcast.
Do you have any tips for anybody when it comes to planning your itinerary? Because I know it can feel really overwhelming. Like I know the UK really well already, and I know we've got places like Whitby and York and things like that on our itinerary. We want to go to Stonehenge and hit a lot of the kind of landmarks that my kids have heard about as well at school, in their Australian school teaching here. Have you got any tips about people that maybe haven't been before, to how do you pick where to go?
Yeah, how you prioritise. It is really difficult. We've actually got because it is such a huge dilemma, I think, for people who are visiting. If you've got a week or 2 weeks or even longer, it's actually choosing where to go. And we went through the same thing. So we actually have a UK travel planning challenge, which I will link to in the show notes, which basically takes you through 5 steps. And it's about identifying the must-dos and the would-like-to-dos, and then looking at a map. I'm very keen on I love maps myself. I've always loved maps, so putting everything on a map helps me because it's very visual. And then it's kind of looking at what works, so that you kind of keep your plans around one specific area and see those places before you move on to the next. So it's kind of identifying those, and then how you're going to get around, so that it makes the most sense, which is why we ended up doing, the Scotland, Midlands, and actually then July, we're going to be more down. We're going to be in London and then the South Coast, and then driving through to Devon and Cornwall, before we'll head back to London and then hopefully over to Paris for a few days. So I think that's the best way to think about it, is to actually, especially if there's quite a few people in your party, because you've got the kids going as well, is kind of identifying what are the must-do places that you really want to visit, and then looking at the map where they are located, and then think about logistics about how you're going to get around, because you don't want to be spending all your time on public transport. If you're going to take the train, kind of work out if you can get the train to those places, and then if you're going to drive, kind of which is now that petrol's so expensive everywhere in the world, but in the UK it's very expensive, is working out, the best way to get around. So we did that. We kind of looked at the places we want to go. We sort of put them together by area, and then we thought, how are we going to get around those areas before then starting to look at hotels and then look at tours. That we did that research and looked at which tours we thought would be of most interest as well to our community, who would be interested in, looking at the different places that we're visiting that we could recommend. So that was basically the way to do it. But I would always suggest to people to do our 5-step itinerary challenge, because it will take you through the videos, so you can listen to the videos, watch the videos, and there's also a little work booklet as well, so you can download that, and it's got maps in it, lots of questions, and you can fill them in. I love making these things, so you can fill it in. It'll just help you kind of focus and think about what your priorities are.
Yeah, that's great. Now, when you're going to a lot of different places and you're all over the place, it can be really challenging trying to keep a handle on all of the bookings that you've got in all different places. How do you manage and track all of your travel plans?
Well, Doug's far more organised than I am with that generally. So he has lots of spreadsheets that he's using at the moment. And I've also just created a new product that we're going to be launching on the website by the time this podcast comes out. Actually, that will be available on the website. So it's basically a UK travel toolkit, which has got checklists, it's got planning lists. It's also got ways that you can keep track of all your hotel bookings, your tour bookings. It's also got a travel journal in there. So so it's a great way to keep everything. So you can download that, have that, take that and get that bound, take that with you, or you can download it. We actually have got an editable PDF. We've had to do it in 2 parts because it's quite a hefty download, but then you can use that, and that's split into that kind of pre-planning when you arrive and then, you're traveling around. So it's the different sections. So that's a great way of keeping everything together. Because I'm not the most organized person. So Doug's far more organized than me. So I thought I have to think of a way that will work for me. Because I find spreadsheets a bit overwhelming, especially when you're dealing with 12 weeks, it's a lot. So he has his system, and I have my system, which is a sheet for each thing that you're going to keep track of, and that's got things like packing lists in it, and how you keeping those key telephone numbers that you need, key email addresses, and also different hotels. As I say, it's like got a page for each of those, and then if you download the printable, you just print out however many pages you'd need for each of those, just to keep track. So yes, that will be available. Again, I'll put a link onto the show notes for that. But yes, that is I think somebody has to be really organized, because trying to keep track of that sort of information can get quite difficult.
Yeah. And I know in some of the travel apps that you might book your hotels with, they help you organise some of it by sort of ordering your hotel bookings and things in the order. I know when we've done road trips before, that's been really helpful to use the apps.
Yeah, that is. But I've found, so for some of our bookings, it's also keeping track of, so most of our hotel bookings you actually pay when you arrive in the hotel, but there are a few that wanted a little deposit maybe 2 weeks before, like when that free cancellation period ends. So because we're staying in, 25 hotels, there's a lot of hotels. So I've got a list of the hotel and then the date and how much will be coming out for each of those. So then I can also keep track, because financially as well, keeping track of how much you spend over that period of time is also going to be really tricky, because we want to also keep an eye on that, so we can kind of say to people what sort of budget we've used, what we've spent to do the trip. So I'm being really keen so I know exactly what's coming out and when, so it's not going to be a surprise. So I've kept track of that with the hotel bookings. Most of the tours I've paid up front. But with a lot of the hotels, I've left it to when we actually, hopefully when we check in, but sometimes a couple of weeks before they're going to take that out. So
so to have to put your toolkit into like a binder or whatever, and just keep it all together with all of your own printouts of all your confirmations you've got, it just seems like a really good idea to have it all.
I think it's really useful. And I know I took my niece to Italy a few years ago for her 21st, and that's how I did that, because we travelled from Rome, actually went all through Italy and then through into Switzerland. And I did it that way. I had basically a printout page for each hotel that we're staying in, or we're taking trains. So I kept track of that as we went. And then I could just throw it away as we went. But, I think Lucy kept hers because she wanted to keep it as a memento of the trip. But part of the reason I did include like a travel journal as well in this, because I know you want to look back on your trip and you might have photos, but it's like, so what was the most memorable part of that day? What did I really enjoy? What was the weather like? So there's sheets in for that as well, so you can keep track of what you did, what you really enjoyed, what was the best things about the day, or what restaurants you ate at, how good it was. So you've got kind of a memento as well that you can bring back of your trip and keep.
That's really good, because when the first time we went on a really big trip, we started a travel blog, and that was what we used to kind of use to log all of that information. So it's really helpful just to have somewhere to just keep detailed notes of those things. When it comes to planning, like where you're going to go in the country, I know we talked a bit about planning your itinerary in general, but say you've got more of a limited time schedule, you might be going for a couple of weeks. You can't go everywhere, can you? No. So how do you decide whether to do Scotland and Wales and England, or whether to do the south of England, or whether to try to spread yourself thin and do more travelling to visit more places, or whether how to fit it all in, how to fit the destinations in?
And I think that is really difficult. And we do get quite a few emails and questions, because quite often people are trying to fit in a lot into a short period of time. And, part of going on holiday is also to have a relaxing time and enjoy it. So I think sometimes if you put too much in, it can be too tiring. But then again, I guess it's based on, what you can manage. But in terms of prioritizing, again, I think if there's quite a few, it's kind of prioritizing what are the places that you really, 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 really want to see, and dependent on your interest. So if you've got an interest in history, for example, you're a Tudor fan, you'll probably want to go to Hampton Court Palace, you might want to go to Hever Castle. When it comes to actually London itself, if you've only got a couple of days in London, again, it's prioritizing those. What are the main places that you want to see? What are the main experiences that you want to have as well? Because it's not sometimes about just actually seeing somewhere. It's about what can you experience. So I know for us as well, we look to see what was on, was there anything specifically that we wanted to actually attend. So there's at the museum, at the British Museum, there's a Stonehenge exhibition on that we're particularly interested in, so we've already booked that. And there's Super Bloom on at the Tower of London, so there's going to be the entire moat is going to be beautiful flowers, so spring flowers. So that's on in June. From the 1st of June onwards, and we were really interested in that. So I wanted to make sure that we could get into London for that. So I booked it for that. So it's I guess that's prioritising if there's something specifically on that you want to go and see, like the Chelsea Flower Show that comes up quite often, that you include that in. If you really want to go up to Edinburgh, which comes up a lot. I say to people, you can go up to, but stop off in York along the way. So, try and add in some other places if you can. If you're going to do that trip anyway, you might as well go off the train and have a couple of hours and walk around York, which again, we've talked about in another podcast. And it's a beautiful city. So try not to rush around too much and because you're not going to see anything. They'll also do say to people, don't fly, take the train. If you can, take the train, because you're going to actually see part of see the countryside, and you're going to meet people rather than, a lot of people said, I might take the fly from London to Edinburgh. I'm like, no, why? Take the train. You're going to see a lot more. Or, you take the sleeper train up to Scotland if you want to save a night. But yeah, I think that choose, and then I just think it's hopefully not going to be your first. Yeah, it might be your first trip to the UK, but it won't be your last trip to the UK. So hopefully, just prioritizing what the people in your party want to do, and if necessarily splitting up as well if you can. So I know Doug's going to do some things in London that I'm not going to do, and I'll be going to places that he won't necessarily be interested in. So we're going to do a bit of that.
I remember you saying in Edinburgh that he was going to do some of the ghost type tours that you're not going to be doing.
No, yes, he's going to do the underground vaults, and no, I'm definitely not going to do the underground vaults. I think I might do the kirkyard, so the graveyard, so the grey fires. I'm interested in that. Above ground, yes. Underground, no. I also get claustrophobic, so it's that sort of experience doesn't suit me at all. But Doug really wants to do it, so he's going to go off and do that. But yeah, we and also actually I'm going to do a boat trip from Oban. So I'm going to go out to Mull, and I'm going to Iona and Fingal's Cave. And Doug doesn't really do particularly well on boats. So rather than subject him to like 10-hour trip, he's actually going to drive up that day to Glencoe a different way than we're driving the next day. So he's going to take some video and do that while I go off and do the boat trip, because it's pointless. So when we talked about that, it was like, well, I really want to do that. I'm really interested in taking that. So that was the best compromise we came up with. And he was like, okay, that's great. I can go up to Glencoe a different way and take some videos of that way so we can share that. But yes, I think it's that bit of compromise sometimes when you've got, I mean, you have that with the kids.
We will have that.
Some of the kids like, want to do some things and others won't want to do. Yeah.
My daughter's obsessed with Harry Potter, and my twin boys are like, no, they're just not interested in that. But I think they will have a great time when we go to Harry Potter's Universal Studios thing. They'll really enjoy that anyway. But so it's definitely going to be dividing interests and dividing and conquering sometimes, where some of us go one way and some of us go another.
And prioritising and not putting too much. And I guess it's like, if you really want to go, so Edinburgh is always a classic one. It's like, Edinburgh is very popular. So yes, go to Edinburgh, but then try and fit something in along the way as well. And quite often, it's reading, I guess, on our website as well, some of the stuff that I will share about places that maybe not on the radar. Like I'm from Northumberland originally, so I will talk quite often about the Northumberland coastal route, and we do itinerary reviews with people, and that's often a way of saying, well, if you're going to go, if you're driving and you're going from Yorkshire up to Edinburgh, then definitely drive through the Northumberland coastal route, because it's stunning, and it's a bit of a hidden gem, I think.
Oh, it's beautiful up there. I'm northern too. It's not quite as northern. I'm more Midlandsy, but I'm from South Yorkshire and then grew up in Lincolnshire, so we spent time holidaying up there, and it's beautiful, really beautiful. So we talked a little bit about train travel. You said that's a thing that you really love, and I know Doug's got a background in the trains as well, so that really helps. I think it's key what you were just saying before about how when you travel by train, you meet all kinds of people. And I know when I was in the UK, I didn't drive till the end of my time in the UK. That's when I learned to drive. So I used to travel everywhere by train, and I met such colourful characters on the trains and have such good memories of hopping on trains to go to music festivals and visit friends and just travel all around on trains. So is train travel the main way you're going to be travelling around, or will you be hiring a car?
We are hiring a car actually for 3 parts of the trip. So we're going to hire a car we have travelled around Scotland quite a lot by train, but because we wanted to get over to the Isle of Skye, we just thought let's hire a car, and also because we've talked to quite a few people who are doing that. So we want to video that and getting the ferry over from Mallaig over to Skye. So we decided to hire a car and also do the North Coast 500. But we'll be getting up there by train, and we'll be coming back down by train, and we'll be doing so we're doing we're visiting the Lake District, and we're doing all of that by public transport, because you can, and there's a good bus network. So we felt rather than take a car and somewhere like the Lake District, which I know they're trying to discourage, we would do that by public transport. The Cotswolds, we are going to be hiring a car as well, because it's better to get around the Cotswolds. Trains don't cover the Cotswolds, so you can get into the Cotswolds by train, but you can't get around the Cotswolds by train. So we're going to be hiring a car and driving around there, and then again we're going to pick up a car in Exeter, and we're going to be driving around Devon and Cornwall. Mainly just you can go down there by train and take tours, but we just wanted a bit more freedom to explore quite a few of the different areas. And again, because we're trying to put quite a lot into our itinerary, that felt to us the best way to do it. So Doug would quite happily travel 99% of the time by train, and normally we would, but this time we have included a bit more road tripping because of those reasons. But yes, most of the day trips will be taken, obviously going out of London. I would never say drive in London. I used to have to drive in London when I worked there, and I would not recommend it. Anybody British will tell you not to drive in London.
I was just going to say, whenever we ever went to London, I don't think I've ever, apart from to go to the airport, I've ever been in a car to London, because from anywhere in the country, you get on the train to London.
Yeah,
you pre-book your tickets, you kind of choose your ticket carefully so you know you're getting the best deal. But when we were living in Hampshire, when we moved over to Australia, we were on the south coast, and it was an hour and a bit into London, it was not worth driving or taking the car or fighting with it. And even from when I lived in the Midlands and Lincolnshire and Sheffield, we used to get the train for meetings in a day and back. It was just much easier.
It's much easier. And like getting around London, you don't need a car anyway. We're actually going to do a future podcast about how to get around London on public transport. So, because I know that's sometimes a source of stress, but you definitely don't want to be doing it when you're driving your own car. That's for sure. So majority of the time train, but yes, a few of the kind of times we'll be in a car, but we'll be taking video of that as well.
And what sort of accommodation have you booked? Like, I know you said you're staying with friends for some of it. Is it mostly hotels? Is it apartments? What kind of accommodation are you staying in?
We're staying in hotels. I just prefer to stay in hotels, and I like to book with free cancellation if possible, because you just never know, if you get sick or you can't. I just don't want to pay for something I don't use. So I've used booking.com for years. That's who we use for our hotels. I prefer a hotel. I have stayed in some alternative accommodation like Airbnb in the past, and they're fine. And I know lots of people, if they're traveling to the UK for a longer time, they're going to be looking for places to wash clothes. Whereas we've got the option of popping over, and we're going to be staying with friends and we're staying with family, so we'll be able to do that. But I know that's one advantage if you have an apartment, or if you go for something like a VRBO or Airbnb, that you've got the opportunity to wash your clothes. I'm going to be traveling really light anyway, so hopefully we'll have occasions where we'll have to do a lot of washing, but otherwise, I just enjoy staying in hotels, basically. I always have done. I'm a hotel person.
There's nothing wrong with that. So what tours have you got booked in? You've obviously locked in lots of different tours for all of the stay that you're doing.
Yeah, we have booked in quite a few bits and bobs. We've booked all our tours in Edinburgh. So we've got a walking tour, we've got a tour of the castle, Doug's doing the underground vaults tour. Then obviously we've got the boat tour from Oban. And then we've got some of our London tours already booked in, and tickets. We've also bought some of the tickets. So we've bought tickets for the London Eye. We've booked our tickets already for Tower of London, because I wanted to go to the Super Bloom event. Some of them you can't book. For example, at the moment, Westminster Abbey you can't book tickets for, so I'm kind of watching that. And I'm also going to have to go on some tours with walks. We're previously called Take Walks, so we're going to be doing some tours with them, and hopefully in Paris as well. Because I really enjoy taking tours. I think if you do a small group tour or a private tour, I know John England was on our previous podcast, episode 7, talking about he's a private tour guide. It's like you learn so much more when you go with a tour guide than you would if A, you do it yourself, or B, you do it in a larger group. Because then trying to ask questions, you feel it's sometimes difficult, and usually 1 or 2 people tend to dominate that. So I kind of like that small group feel, where you can learn a bit more about the place that you're visiting. So that's something I'm always keen to do. And for example, with John England, John England takes you, he'll pick you up and drive you. So if you want to go somewhere like Hever, he will pick you up, meet you at the train station, and then drive you there. So you don't have that worry about trying to access these places if you don't want to hire a car, and like some of the places you can't get to, and the big tour buses can't get to, that he could take you to. And also I quite like the idea of having a tailor-made tour with something a bit more specific to what we want. I've also booked in actually a photographer as well, who's going to be taking some shots, brand shots, I guess. They're going to be UK travel planning in London, that we'll be having on the website as well. So I think that's also a lovely thing to do as well, if you're traveling with family, to actually have a professional photographer, because I'm often not in the photos. I take all the photos, and there's loads of photos of Doug, and there's like 1 photo of me. So I thought this time I'm actually going to have a professional photographer come and take some nice shots of me and Doug, in our t-shirts, and we've got a branded t-shirt, at the Tower of London, Tower Bridge. So we're really looking forward to that as well. So that's going to be a real treat.
That sounds fab.
Yeah.
Now, we talked before about all of the afternoon tea, kind of really nice cakes and things like that you're going to be enjoying when you get to England. Have you made any restaurant bookings? How are you kind of approaching that? Are there any places that are like really hard to get into that you found that you need to pre-book? Or
so my feeling with this is, if you can book it because the last thing I want is to be disappointed. So I've already booked restaurant in York. I've booked some afternoon teas in Edinburgh. So yeah, we're going to go to the Dome in Edinburgh for afternoon tea, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. I'm looking forward to that, because you just know closer to the time people are going to be booking that. So I'd rather, with the Witchery as well. So we're in Edinburgh for 3 days and we've got 3 afternoon teas.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so that's going to be, and I'm hoping London, which is, it's even more difficult to choose in London. In London, in fact, I'm probably going to ask my Facebook group to choose, because I have got 10 potential afternoon teas that I cannot choose between. So I think I'm going to put that out to them and say, which ones would you like us to go and try for you? Again, put myself out there, but sometimes you have to make sacrifices.
It's a hard life.
So I think I'm probably going to ask them to choose from the 10. So because I genuinely don't know at the moment. At the moment, I think Fortnum and Mason is probably going to be a definite. I'm also very keen on trying out the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory at 1 Aldwych. So that's really high on our list. I think you've got
do that one, because my daughter would like a review of that one. She would definitely like that one.
And there's also a Peter Pan themed one at the Shard at the moment, which I have my eye on as well. Because what a beautiful view you're going to get when you have afternoon tea. So I think the issue is you've got themed afternoon teas, and then you've got traditional afternoon teas. So we want a mix of both. But if I get back over to the UK, which I'm hoping later on in the year, potentially, then I'll be doing even more afternoon teas. And the Ritz hopefully will be a treat for my mum for Christmas. But don't tell her. Don't tell her. It's a surprise. It's really difficult. I mean, and I get asked that quite often. So if you're going to go somewhere special, like an afternoon, book it. Definitely get that booked. If there's a restaurant you have got your heart set on and you can book it, just book it, because there's nothing worse to say than if you get there and, it's fully booked, you haven't made that reservation because everybody else has got there before you. So, there's definitely lots of places you can pop into, like pubs, if you want to have a Sunday lunch. But even then, I would inquire if you need to make a booking. Places that you want to pop into for a coffee or, cafes, I would say probably not. You could probably just pop in as you walk past. But, there's lots of very famous places in London, whether they're Instagram worthy, for example, like Peggy Portion. So, we're going to visit there. So we're going to be trying out some of their cakes, but also taking some pictures of the beautiful shop. And it's absolutely gorgeous on the outside. And on the inside. So I guess it's prioritizing again which restaurants you're particularly interested in. Is it because you're interested in, the Instagram worthiness of it, or is it that and the food, or, is it a Michelin starred restaurant that you really want to visit? Or is it that you just want to try traditional fish and chips? Because then that's fine. You can just go to the fish and chip shop and order it.
Depending on which fish and chip shop.
Well, that's true.
Because when my husband and I went on our honeymoon, we knew we'd be very tired after the wedding. So we planned our proper honeymoon for the following year. Yeah. And we did a road trip up from the south coast all the way up to Scotland to Edinburgh and around. And we came back down via Whitby and York. And all
You're going to mention Whitby,
I'm going to mention Whitby because I love Whitby. And so, that was our first introduction to like a restaurant that was like really oversubscribed, and it was a fish and chip shop, and then there was a queue right out down the road.
That's going to be the Magpie, which we will be visiting because that is world famous, a Magpie in Whitby, and we will definitely be having fish and chips from the Magpie. So
we lined up in the rain on that late night, just almost at closing time, really keeping our fingers crossed that we'd get in. We hadn't made a booking, and we were the last people that they allowed in that night, and we just got in, and it was very good, and it was very worth the effort. But so even little fish and chip shops can sometimes kind of have long queues, but
worth checking. I think we will put a link to the Magpie and Whitby into the show notes for sure. So it's worth, if you can, putting a list of specifically those ones that are famous or well known, or that you really want to visit, and then get it booked. And I know we've paid some deposits for some of the afternoon teas, so expect you may have to pay a kind of a deposit on that booking as well, which is fair enough. But yeah, I'm always happy when I've got those locked in, and we haven't quite got the London ones locked in yet, so I'm a little bit nervous because I'm like, but then at least there's lots to choose from. Yeah.
So you said you were traveling light when you're going, and I know I'm a big fan of that, because when we went backpacking, it was that whole idea of put everything on the bed, have a look at it, and then cut it in half. And my travel rucksack is quite tiny, so I tend to travel as light as I can, although it's much harder since having kids now to do that. What are you taking? What are you not taking? Have you got any tips for us to help with our planning for the UK? Because the weather can be very changeable.
Yeah, I think that's more the key for us actually this trip, because we'll be in Scotland, and May can be still pretty cool. It's going to, well, the thing is the UK weather. You don't go to the UK for weather, do you? Really, you don't go for sunshine. Hopefully, it will be sunny. Fingers crossed that it's going to be a lovely summer, but you just don't know. And the UK weather can change really rapidly, but because we are in Scotland, I'm more conscious of that. I will need warmer clothes than I will need warmer clothes than I'm going to need in London, because it's always a few degrees warmer in London. So I'm going for layers. I have got a few pairs of jeans that I'm taking, a couple pairs of jeans, leggings. I love my leggings because they're just so comfortable, and then t-shirts. So it's layering really, and I've got a couple of jackets that are kind of the spring jackets, so they're reasonably thick. Probably will be too thick for Australia, but warm enough for the UK. So not quite my winter coat, those really heavy coats, but I will take kind of those intermediate ones. Doug swears by having a rain jacket, but I don't like them. They make me a bit just too hot and sweaty. But I mean, a pack-a-mac there would be really useful.
An umbrella.
Umbrellas, yeah. And I know an umbrella in London is usually not recommended. And again, if it's windy, you can't use it. But I can't do the pack-a-mac thing. But otherwise, I'm thinking really carefully about shoes as well. So making sure that I'm taking comfortable sandals, but I'm also taking trainers, runners with me as well, that are comfortable, because we're going to do a lot of walking. I do have a pair of boots that are already in the UK that I left when I was there last time, so I could always wear those, but I may potentially need those for Scotland. But again, it's just checking the weather forecast, the week before, before you go, so you can, if you're planning. Obviously it's a bit harder for us because we're packing for 12 weeks. But it's more that thinking layers, thinking a t-shirt with a long sleeve jumper over the top, even if it's a thin cotton type jumper, and then a scarf. And then I'm also going neutral colours, so lots of kind of blacks and then like greys, and then I've got navy blue stuff, and then you can put a nice scarf with it as well.
I was going to say things you can dress up to kind of go out and about.
Yeah, so I'm trying to minimise the amount that we take, and so I use packing cubes as well. I'm a big fan of packing cubes. Because especially if you're traveling around, at least you can pack, you can pack all your things for certain days, and then it means you don't have to get everything out. So if you've got Monday's clothes and then Tuesday's clothes, then you just take that out. So I've got, I don't know how many packing cubes I've got, quite a few. And I actually use packing cubes for my electricals. I use them when I go on the plane, because the last thing you want is to be rummaging around your bag trying to find stuff. So I put everything into little packing bags, little packing cubes. So I've got to say lots of them. I find them really invaluable. We're also going to be taking lots of electronics. We've got our laptops. We've got GoPro. We've got a little Pocket 2 that we use for recording. So we've also got a drone. So maybe we can get a little bit of shots in Scotland with that. So we've got a lot more electronic stuff.
It's not travelling very light.
No, we aren't. Well, no, probably not electronics, more on clothes. But the thing is, I always think, to be honest, you can always go and buy stuff. I mean, there's some nice shops in the UK to go and have a little look around. And
actually, I think when we go, we might take an empty suitcase or a fairly empty cases with a view that we'll be bringing things back, no doubt.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to be honest, last time I went into Sainsbury's and I bought quite a few pairs of leggings. They were, really cheap.
I thought you were going to say sort of chocolate biscuits or food shopping or something that you were missing, the food you were missing from there.
No, I just went and bought some leggings because they were really comfortable. I just think the key is to just say lay out on the bed what you've got, and if you can, try and reduce half that, because you just won't. Even as strict as I am, you don't wear everything that you take. It's just, I don't know many people who do. I'd love to be able to just take carry-on, and I've done that in the past, but I think for 12 weeks probably won't be able to do that this time. It's going to have to be a suitcase. But yeah, it's we've already started kind of listing what we're taking and putting stuff out, because obviously it's summer in Australia, so we're not wearing the clothes that we would be wearing taken to the UK, that's for sure. So I've already started to look and kind of prioritize what I want to take when I'm over there. But the key is always layers, and even in the winter in London, when you go, I always find that, you know, you dress up, you go into London and you're dressed up with all your, you know, you've got your jumper on and you've got your jacket on, sweater on, I should say. You've got your big thick coat, you've got your scarf, you've got your gloves, you've got a hat on, and then you're walking around and you get hot. Then you walk into a shop and the heating is blasting out, and then you have to take everything off because you're just too hot, and then you get back out onto the street, and then you're putting everything back on again. So again, that layers really, and I always overdress. I think when I go to London, I'm trying to, you know, wear less and think, you know, I'm going to have to keep taking these things off. So I have a bag even that you can put those clothes in when you're in there.
Yeah, and that's a good tip actually. When I used to do a lot of train travel in the UK, was take a cardigan or a jumper or something, because even if it's hot and sunny outside, they can have the aircon quite fierce on there. So there's quite a few times that I'd be sitting there wrapped up in my little cardigan, just kind of shivering because it was so cold on the train.
That's it. And we've got like hoodies that we take as well, that we kind of, you know, we've got thin. I've got a really thick one I bought when I was in Canada. I was in Vancouver and did a boat trip, and, you know, it was summer, but it was still quite chilly. So I bought quite a thick fleece kind of hoodie, but I've also got a thin one as well, which rolls up really small. So we'll definitely be taking that to Scotland. Yeah, so I think it's, as I say, it's thinking in mix and match as well. So thinking comfort, thinking what's comfortable. Shoes particularly is the one that I say you don't want to have, you know, one day walking around and then you find the next day you've got blisters, and then you don't really want to go anywhere because your feet are hurting. So don't think about fashion and necessarily looking the prettiest, but just think actually these shoes are practical and they're comfortable. So
yeah. So what is it you're most looking forward to?
Oh, so many things. Honestly, so much. It'll be lovely to see, obviously, friends and family. But I'm looking forward to Scotland. I'm really looking forward to Scotland. I absolutely, my background is Scottish, so my maiden name is Scottish. My dad's family are from Scotland, so I just absolutely love being up there. And Glencoe is one of my favourite places in the entire world, so I'm really excited to get back to Glencoe. I'm also taking the Jacobite train, is going to be amazing. Everything really. I know that sounds a bit dry, but everything, all the afternoon teas that we're going to do. I'm actually looking forward to being able to do Facebook Lives and YouTube videos that I can show people when we're there, you know, and share what we're experiencing and passing on kind of tips, you know, then as we're actually there. So it'll be fantastic to be able to be in Edinburgh and do a Facebook Live or YouTube video and pass out those tips while we're actually, you know, surrounded by that city. So that's going to be just fabulous. All of it. I'm looking forward to getting down to Devon and Cornwall again. Oh, and I'm really excited about going to see the Mary Rose, because I didn't see the Mary Rose when I lived in the UK, and I know the museum looks fantastic now. It's going to be a really exciting experience. We're going to be visiting with family who visited the Mary Rose a number of times. They actually live in Hampshire. So that's going to be, I'm really looking forward to that. That's that historian. I used to be a history teacher. So I think that's a day that I'm really, really, really excited about. But yeah, all of it.
It's too hard to choose one thing. So I know for us, we're finding like the logistical planning is huge. You've got to think about whether your house is going to be empty, who's looking after it, what you're going to do with mail. Have you got any pets that you need to find? Like there's so much logistics goes involved in planning a big trip away. And when we go, we're looking at probably a 4-week trip, maybe a 5-week trip. How are you organising all of that side of things? Because we're trying to kind of get organised now and think, which bills do we have that aren't on direct debit that we need to move over to direct debit so they just pay automatically while we're away and we don't have to think about it? Things like here in Australia, we've got a swimming pool and how we're going to manage that being taken care of while we're away. And we've got a dog and all of those different things. So how do you plan all of the logistics of leaving your life behind for that?
I know, for that length of time. Well, we're looking in one respect that we live in an apartment. So we have a neighbour who's going to look after the apartment for us while we're away. And we don't have any pets at the moment. Previously, when we've travelled, I have somebody come and stay at our house, or we've put the dog in kennels. What we actually do, which is useful and something I think is really helpful for somebody that's gone away for even a short period of time, is actually to have a house sitter. And we've actually, Doug and I have done house sitting before. So basically, if somebody's gone on holiday, we've just gone and looked after the house, looked after the pets, watered the plants, kept everything ticking over. So that's a really good service to consider if you're going away. If you haven't got somebody that can stay, a family member that can stay, or somebody who can pop in, you could actually go through a house sitting service, so where we're trusted house sitters, so we do that. So that's a good way to kind of get that looked after. In terms of bills and everything, we've sat down, again, Doug with his spreadsheet. We've put a spreadsheet together so we know what bills are coming out and when. So we haven't got much on direct debit actually, so I probably will just be making sure that I know what's going to be paid when. So we'll do that. Otherwise, the car will stay in the garage, and that'll be fine. And we've asked somebody just to turn the engine over kind of every month. So we've got friends to do with that. But as part of the travel toolkit as well, I've got a page on that, which is actually for if you have house sitters or family, which has got all the important telephone numbers in, because I think that's important as well. If you're away, if you have house sitters, or if you've left your house locked up, but you've got people checking on it for your post or whatever, is that you make sure that you give them a list of all the important information. So a copy of your itinerary, so we've got that, but also a list of all the telephone numbers that can contact you when you're away if there is a problem. Actually, I remember a few years ago we had friends in the UK who were visiting Australia actually, and we were looking after their house, and it was a very, very cold winter in the UK, and the pipes burst and flooded their entire bathroom and hall. Unfortunately, we had to get in contact with her, and it was the middle of the night in Australia at that time. But you never know, there can be emergencies, and things like free insurance details, it's useful to leave that information with people. So yeah, that is one part of it, and we've spent kind of a day going through that and working out exactly what we needed with that. But obviously, if you use a house sitter, then you put a pack together with information, but then they can potentially take care of your post, your pet, and look after your house as well. So that's a good system.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. So it's been really, really helpful talking to you and picking your brains. Have you got any final tips to leave us with, just for give us a bit more inspiration?
Well, this is the question I ask every podcast guest, is what would be your one tip if you're visiting the UK for the first time? So my tip is going to be listen to our podcast, look at our website, and if you're on Facebook, come and join our Facebook community, because you'll meet other people who have recently been to the UK or planning the trip. So yeah, that's the best way. We are a fantastic resource that we're putting together. We've been putting together now for 2 years. So come and read our stuff, talk to us, book our itinerary review service, and listen to our podcasts.
And even though I'm from the UK and I'm planning my trip back there now, I find it really useful. Like, there's so much information in there. It's really helping us to sort of work out what we're going to do on our big trip later in the year. So thanks so much, Tracy. That's been great.
Well, thanks, Karen. It's been really great to talk to you today. And we'll can't wait to speak again. So that's it for another episode of UK Travel Planning Podcast. I would like to say thank you for listening. And if you've enjoyed today's episode and would like to follow along on our UK travel adventure, you can find us via our Facebook group, Instagram and YouTube channels. And also you'll be able to find out which afternoon's teas we end up trying out in London. You'll also find the show notes for today's show at uktravelplanning/episode 9. Again, thanks for listening, and thanks for Karen for joining me today. Don't forget to subscribe on your favourite podcast app so you don't miss an episode, and please do leave us a review. Until next time, happy UK travel planning.